everyone. Welcome to SALT. And we are here, and Miranda's making last-minute adjustments to what it is she's going to talk about today. So, and this week on SALT, it's...
But it's not my fault we're late.
No.
No, that's because of technology and
yes, getting
like
a new arrangement here.
So I took the opportunity to, and then, yeah. So.
Yes, well, anyway, it's election week here at SALT, where we talk about the election.
Ish. Well, that may have gone somewhere.
Let me tell you how I feel about the election.
What? No.
Yeah,
we aren't talking about that.
This is how I feel. The way things are going, if you look at whoever you're voting for, the whole thing, they're spending money in 7 states. There are, because of the Electoral College, Texas doesn't matter. California does. I mean, they kind of put all that in, but in
voting.
7 states kind of decide the election. How do you think Montana feels about that? What about North Dakota and South Dakota? What about them? Anyway, it is a little odd that those few states, I think it's Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and I forget the last one, but really they're like focusing all their money and time in those states. And you got to feel like the rest of them, like, what about us? Which is why some people are like, we should go to the popular vote, not the Electoral College. And I think we've just, at some point in our republic, we should take a look at how we do elections, like, make it a little more equitable for the entire country. Although, there's more population in Pennsylvania there than there is in Montana, basically. Like, there's more cows, I guess, in North Dakota than there are people. And so they try to spread out the vote that way. But it really is interesting how we've gotten, because of population since 1776, how population growth and how it's spread out in the country has created this lopsided, kind of system.
And maybe back then, if they would have had the same thing, they would have chosen to do things.
To do it differently, yeah.
Possibly.
So
that's not what we're talking about today.
No. I read an article. Somebody's like, I'm not against the Constitution. I think the Constitution is a wonderful thing. But after so many years, at some point, at what point in our country's history do we start looking at going, this served us well for 200 and something years, but what about today's world do we need to modify to make it more fair and equitable for everybody?
But Brett does not have all the answers.
I don't. And neither do the politicians. It's like something people study, and no one's come up with a real great solution yet. But we're sort of back in that same place where our founding fathers got together. And how are we going to do this? We're now like, how are we going to do this? And I just found that interesting, and that it's what's the word when something is current events, basically. But it's fun. Aspen and I every now and then sit around and kick around what's going on in the news. I do that with Aspen. I enjoy that with Aspen. I try it with my students, and they just look at me with blank expressions. And it's very, very sad. Our daughter's exceptional, that. She actually reads things. She's up on what's going on in the world, and we just sit here and brag about our daughter because.
And everybody on the world now will go, yeah, right.
Yeah,
as
right.
they're rolling their eyes.
It's true, but our daughter really is exceptional. It's not just us.
She's probably one of the few teenagers who keeps their parents up till 10 o'clock at night because she just wants to talk to them.
Yeah. And reads books.
As her parents prop open their eyes with their toothpicks and say, my teenager wants to talk to me at 10 p.m. I must stay awake.
But yeah, that's a big thing. At the university right now, we weren't trying to get our students to read books because their reading level is so low and people don't read books anymore. And that's another. Why don't people read books anymore?
Yeah, that's true, because books are great.
And so we're trying to a big push of get back to reading,
Yes, well, not that I'm bragging about the number of books I've read recently, but, books are still great.
But you were a reader.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love to read.
Yeah, Miranda, all through her childhood, she was a bookworm. I, on the other hand, I used books for things, but very little was it actually reading them.
Yes. And how did you use the book?
I thought.
I hear there's a story. I'm guessing there's a story behind it. So he had to say that for a reason.
I hear this is a great book. I should read it sometime. As I used it to stack things up and hold doors open and things like that. But anyway, not what we're talking about either. I don't know what we're talking about.
Oh, remember you're telling your personal story about going to the fair when you were a kid. As I don't know how he started telling us his story the other night, but it was one of those nights we were up late, just chit-chatting. And
how it came up.
I don't know how the story came up, but he told it to us, and I was like, maybe we can use this for salt.
Yeah, I don't remember what we were talking about.
I don't remember either.
But, yeah, we were kicking things around, and for some reason I was talking about the fair, and the fair was a big deal when I was a kid, growing up in South Carolina, and the state fair. And I mean, it's, the fair goes to all their names, so everyone has their state fair. And we had the state fair in Columbia, South Carolina, and, it was cool. They had the Midway, and that had all the games and the rides, and that's where all the kids wanted to go. And then they had the buildings, and over in the big buildings, and they all had names, but I don't remember their names now. But over there was the exhibits, and that's where all the parents wanted to go, was to see the art exhibits and the photography exhibits and all that kind of stuff. And then also South Carolina, so they had the farm area where the prize-winning pig and cow and sheep and goat and all that was over there. And anyway, it was a big deal, and so I think it was for like 1 week, 2 weekends in 1 week. Was how long the fair was in town, and so everybody tried to jam in and go there. And my dad would go because in the buildings, one of the buildings, local businesses would set up a booth basically, and whatever their business was. And you'd had like farmers market stuff too, but you also had the car dealerships that have a car in there, and the music stores would have pianos and organs, and my dad was a big organ. He used to sell organs, and he played the organ really well. And every year he'd go, and it was one of my favorite memories of my dad he would sit on the organ, and he'd sit there and play, and he would just play, and it would be this thing that would just draw crowds because he was really good, and people would just swarm, and he'd be surrounded by this big crowd of people listening to him play the organ, and I'd sit there watching, so we always went, and Dad was pretty generous. So whenever my friends and I, with my brother and my sister and me, and then any friends we had, he would always give us money. And
you're missing part of the story.
No, I'm getting it. And
yeah.
So they would give us $25. And $25 was a lot of money back then, and so we would get there, and I'd watch my dad. But eventually we would get, you go, and here's 20. And then we would get $25. This is in the 70s, so $25 went a long way. And that was for us to go to play the game, basically just give money to the people because you couldn't win those games. And get tickets and rides and stuff. And so every year, people wanted to go with us because they knew Dad would, my dad gave money to whoever went with, me or Beth or Craig. And so we were very popular at times during the fair because people wanted to go with us. And so when fair was coming around, everyone was like, "Oh, Brett, we want to go to the fair. Take us to the fair. When are you going to the fair, Brett? Let's go with you." So so we'd go to the fair, and my dad would give us all money and everything. And we all had a good time, and we enjoyed it. And we were friends, and they liked me. That's my story.
They ditched
That's
him.
my story. They liked me for who I was.
Until they ditched him and forgot to take him home.
They didn't ditch me. We just got separated in the crowd at the gate at the beginning.
Oh, I see. That's how it worked.
Brett, you stay here and hold the gate. We'll come back for you. Yeah, it was kind of sad how we would be together for maybe the first 10, 15 minutes, and then I would end up separated from the group, and they were off doing their things. And I should have known. Sometimes it was my own fault. I should have known when, 3 couples wanted to go to the fair with me, and I was the odd one out, and it was boy, girl, and Brett. And then the couples would all have a wonderful time on my inheritance money.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so that was it.
Oh, and then on the ride home, or rather lack of it.
That only happened once, twice maybe. I don't remember. They were having such a great time.
Remember, keep in mind, Brett's dad is driving them.
It was a big car.
And it was very
that fit lots of people.
Yeah,
Easy
no
to get
doubt.
lost in the back seat.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
Until he got home and realized I wasn't there.
And no children reminded your father. I mean, after all, he'd given them a lot of money. They couldn't remind him of the...
Well, I'm sure they assumed I had gotten a ride with somebody else.
Yeah, likes.
There were people at the fair. Any one of them could have given me a ride home. There was hundreds of people at the fair.
Mm-hmm. A stranger could have kidnapped you.
My friends liked me.
And his mother had to drive 45 minutes one way to get him.
Yeah, that's the bad part. The fair was downtown Columbia, and we lived on Lake Murray, which was at the time out. Like it was like in the country part of Columbia. So you had to drive out of the main city, and then like any town, you know, you got the main city, and then you've got little towns along the way, but they're still part of, you know, the city. So there's like Irmo and like that kind of thing, and we were out on the edge, so it was like 45 minutes from my house to get to the fair. So Mom was like, you know, where are the kids? And I was like, I dropped them all off. No, our kid. And like, oh yeah. Oops.
Yeah. Okay, so anyways, he told that story. It reminded me of the Bible verse in Isaiah 51:23. I'll just read the NSAB version first.
All right, one other thing that I didn't tell her.
Oh boy.
At the fair, there was this big rocket in the middle, and it was well known that if you got lost, you went to the rocket. Everyone did that. And so you would always hear over the loudspeaker, so-and-so, go to the rocket, your parents are there, da-da-da, go to the rocket, your mom's looking for you. I mean, it was just, everyone was happy, you know, and everyone knew that. If you were sitting under the rocket, you weren't really just taking in the sights. You were lost or waiting for somebody. And so as the evening progressed and the crowds at the rocket began thinning and thinning and thinning,
he knew he'd been left.
Actually, I was the only one at the rocket. And people are like, what a sad little boy. What a sad little homeless child.
Yeah, because he may have been 10, but he probably looked like he was 5.
Would you like a piece of bread, homeless boy? I was left by the rocket by myself.
It was very sad.
Yes, anyway.
Yes. Anyways, okay.
Make your point at my expense.
Well, it just reminded me of this verse, and so, which I've read any number of times over the course of my life, and I'm pretty old by now, so a handful of times at least, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember when, okay, so I'll read it first. I'll put it into the hand of your tormentors who have said to you, lie down that we may walk over you. You have even made your back like the ground and like the street for those who walk over you. And I like how the NCV version says they made your back like dirt for them to walk on, for you were like a street for them to travel on. And
even in Bible times, they had doormats.
Yes, yes. And I remember when I'd read that when I was younger, I would just go, oh yeah, I know what they're talking about. You know, I'm a doormat. I know it. I get walked on, and I just say, come back and do it again. I know it's not healthy. I'm not promoting that. I'm just saying that's how it was, you know. There's those who walk on people and those who get walked on, and you know, but I don't know, honestly, I can't say it bothered me in particular, because usually you're kind of being nice and helping people. They're using you, but, you know, so.
Oh, I was a doormat too. I was a people pleaser, which is also a doormat.
Yeah.
And I did it because I wanted everyone to like me. I'd never want anyone to be upset, especially at me. All the classic reasons for being a doormat. And, you know, I was the same way. And I would do anything to make you happy or make you like me.
It doesn't really bother you per se.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It sort of, what it's supposed to is it kind of builds up over time, where as you get older and it keeps going on and more in your life.
Yeah, you don't like it.
Yeah.
You don't like it, but you just kind of you kind of get used to it in a way, I suppose.
Yeah.
You're conditioned to that basically from childhood, shall we say, you know.
Well, in church work especially, doormat workaholism is the blessed, sanctified
saint
addiction
yes.
that they like, you know, that's what a pastor's supposed to be like, you know, or a church worker. You know, you just do and do and do because you're doing it for God, and, you know, and people take advantage of it.
Yeah, but we're not really here to talk about that part of it because we're not experts. We don't have degrees in that.
I'd say we're experts in practicing.
We're experts. Yeah,
the practice thereof.
It's true.
Shall we talk about... No.
I'm sure I read plenty of books.
We have stories about being used by a church anyway.
Yeah, well, moving on. Saying kind words. So, anyways, okay. So, you know, basically we aren't going to talk about that so much. But, as like in the everyday living part. But, you know, when we serve sin, that is what happens. You know, we don't really see it necessarily right away. But, you know, we like to think, for example, that pride makes us bigger and better people and that she serves us. But in reality, that's not how it works. We are serving her, and she is the one who's making our back like dirt and walking on us like we're a street. Basically, this was kind of what Brett was talking about, political agenda, or, you know, politics, basically. That's because pride has a political agenda. There are two political forces, basically, or sides in this universe, and one is God's side and one is Satan's side. And pride works for Satan, and Satan just wants to see us not serve God, you know, and so he makes sin as attractive as he can, and yet it's as if pride basically and sins like that are stomping all over our back. They are using us to win for the other side. And so, anyways, I thought it was just kind of a different way of looking at that. That pride does not serve us. We think it does. We think pride makes us bigger and better and have more and such, but it's not true at all because it is pride that is using us.
I think maybe it's a little like, too, being a doormat when you're young versus being a doormat as your age goes on in life, and that, you know, when you're younger, or whatever, you know, and the pride you have and whatever, that the effects of it don't hit you as much as you're younger, and so it can feel like, you know, it's working for you, it's serving for you, but as you go on, it becomes more ingrained, it becomes more part of you, and that's where you start to realize at some point that, wait a minute, this whole time I've been working for it and didn't realize it, you know, and then you kind of get really wrapped up and trapped in the cycle of, you know, I have to have this to be, you know, successful. I have to be this and do more to have that and be, and it's hard to get out of.
Yeah, it is. It really is because, let me see. It's been a long time. It was when we first moved to Lincoln. I had bought the book Humility by Andrew Murray just maybe 6 months before we moved to Lincoln. And I read through it. No, wait. I didn't even read through it until probably about at least 8 months later. And then all of a sudden when I read it, I was like, oh my goodness, this is the best thing I've ever read. It's exactly what I need, right? And so I was determined to have it. Well, you know, it's really is not like that. I must have read through the book 7 or 8 times in literally a few months, and it wasn't a particularly big book. But I was determined, you know, and I would underline and highlight, and and so finally, you know, you kind of like, whew, you know, and you really start to realize that every time you figure out a different dimension of what pride looks like, you're like, okay, got that. You know, we're trying to avoid that and ask for God's help and stuff like that. Well, pride is really the greatest shapeshifter of all times because it just goes underground in your life as something else, or, you know, something that was already there that, you know, you don't recognize. And eventually you're like, oh, that too. Now that's what pride is in my life. So pride shows up in a lot of different ways that we don't really realize.
I didn't think of that one. Yeah, I didn't. That's a shapeshifter. That's addiction is like that. Some people, they get over one addiction, and they just traded it for something else, and they don't realize I got rid of that, but I picked this up in its place, and it's kind of like that's what you're saying, pride. Oh, I defeated it here, but over here I'm so proud I defeated that. Look at me, It's just it's that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a lifelong battle, basically, I think, with pride.
So tell us, Miranda, how do we get over pride?
All right, I'm gonna sit here like Paul, because I was just reading where he said this again today, and that I'm not claiming victory over that myself. Or would he say something like that in?
He talks about.
Was that Corinthians or Philippians or something like that?
One of the Ians, Philippians, Corinthians.
One of the somethings, yeah. And I was like, the guy got it, and it's true. And such a hard worker for God. And look at all those books he wrote for him. It's in the Bible. And he's still not claiming, like, ultimate victory over sin.
Not that I have attained this, but I strive every day.
Yeah. So, on the other hand, humility, while we tend to think of her as small and weak, she does not need our help to do anything. Fact is, we need help to be humble. And it is only by the power of God that we can live out the humility, the humble lifestyle that He has for us to live. And humility is what keeps pride from walking all over our backs like it's a street.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and basically, along with that freedom comes living without the armor of God. Oh, without the armor of pride. We use pride to protect ourselves, to make ourselves look good and better than, and we have this and that and whatever. And so we use pride as a protection against people hurting us as well and such. And so God, on the other hand, gives us His armor. And that's found in Ephesians 6. And when I got to thinking about it in that context about how it protects us, and I got to thinking how each piece of the armor of God would actually be based on love, or be love, God's love to us. And of course, our love returned to Him. But basically, so let's start out with the helmet of salvation. Is that not the ultimate of God's love lived out towards us? And then there would be the breastplate of righteousness. Oh, walking in the path of righteousness is simply living out God's love, His acts of love. And the shield of faith is nothing but living out a loving relationship with God. The belt of truth. I mean, what greater truth is there than God's love for us? The sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. Full of God, it's God's message of His love to us, right? Okay, which I think takes us down to the shoes of peace. And what is peace outside of, one, our peaceful relationship with God, and then we live out peaceful actions of love to all the people that we're going to come into contact with for the day. And that's the peaceful actions of love are not prideful actions. We're not protecting ourselves with pride. We're allowing the armor of God's love to protect us. And it is at this point in time where we can honestly start feeling naked without our sins there to protect us. And so, anyways, I just thought I liked your story, and we used it to use for an illustration for today. And I just thought sometimes it helps to look at things in a new perspective, because we hear it the same way all the time, and just try to present things a little bit different. I know it helps me, and I hope that it will spark some, maybe I can do it that way too. Maybe that's what's going to a help. Obviously, it's only it's the Spirit of God that helps us,
and I think,
such, so.
yeah, you were talking about, in the, armor of God and how it's the, all of it is related to love. I didn't want to talk about how do you fight pride? How do you, overcome and not let pride take over your life? We talk about humility and what is humility and what does it look like? And that's a good way to put it. All those different things, are how they relate to God's love for us and our, how we give love to other people.
Yeah.
But I think it's like I've always said, the antithesis to pride is to embrace, who I am, my position, embrace really, my lot in life, my place in life. And what is that? Is a, created, holy, loved, and forgiven much child of God. And as I embrace that, I recognize that that's who you are too, and you are too, and you are too. And we are all, these greatly loved and greatly forgiven children of God, so that, I know about forgiveness for you because I know how much I've been forgiven. And I try to act lovingly towards others because I know how much God has, loved me. And that really kind of, kicks pride out the door when you not only realize that's your place in life, but that's everybody else around you also is the object of God's love.
And that is the true abiding of the Holy Spirit within us, because He's the one who gives us that gentle type of spirit, and that joyful relationship with God that allows us to actually recognize that and live that out by His power, because we start relying on His power to do that for us.
Yep. We're not going to get into it, but that was part of what we're trying to say in Sabbath school today in Revelation is what is the mark of the beast, but what does the seal of God look like? And it's, God's name on your heart, on your head and your hand, and it's His character, and it's that love. And you're sealed by the Holy Spirit. And what does that mean? It means this. It means this is what it looks like. And, trying to get that across is, the mark of the beast, seal of God, isn't a specific thing. It's who you are. It's who you choose to.
Yeah, right. Because there's all kinds of conspiracy theories out there. So it's this, so it's that, so it's it, But
it's about your relationship with God.
Yeah, it's about your relationship with God.
So anyway, all right. So that was it for today. But again, in Sabbath school, we did some stuff on Revelation and talked about some things. And I was teaching, and so at the end, I was trying to get everybody to this idea of, how they are the special object of God's love and creation. And I read an excerpt from a book that I thought was very meaningful and powerful. And somehow next SALT, we're going to work that in some way, because I think it's really good and it should be shared with the world. And so I don't know how she's going to do it, but Miranda's going to come up with an amazing, intelligent, beautiful, awesome way of working that into next week's message, because it's something we need to do.
Okay, well, there you have it.
There you have it. So,
there I have it.
Yes, your assignment is in front of you now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
All right, so thanks for joining us, and hope you had a great Sabbath, and take care of yourself, and we'll see you